Hi everybody, it's Jenni Smith with the Splendid Sampler to Sew Along. This week we're on a block called Catnap that's got a lovely embroidered design of a very sweet cat. I don't like cats in real life because they make me sneeze and I'm allergic to their fur, but I have enjoyed making this block. So I'm going to talk you through the different stitches. I interface the background, which I think is really important actually before you even get started, how to transfer the design if you haven't got a light box, and then just some other little tips and tricks as we go along. So because this week's block has got lots of hand sewing and embroidery, the instructions tell you to cut out your block bigger in case it frays at the edges. So this is, my background square is 7 inches. And also, like with the clamshell block, I'm going to put a square of lightweight interfacing on the back to support the embroidery stitches. So I've just cut this to 6.5 inches and I'm going to fuse it on the back. If you haven't got a light box, then I'm just going to use a sheet of carbon paper. So I'm going to square up the edges of the carbon paper, colour side down on the right side of my fabric, background square, and then I'm going to position this so that I've got 1/4 of an inch extra around the edge, and then I can trace the design. This way I know that the cat is facing in the right direction. If you've got a 2B pencil, that's the best pencil when you're using that onto fabric for embroidery. And I'm going to mark through all these lines, but you don't need to continue the lines that go through the cat, so I'm going to miss these ones out here and just copy the rest, ready to start stitching. So you can see that I've now used the carbon paper to transfer all of the design, not crossing through the cat, and the next job is to do some of the stitching. And the instructions say about 1 strand of embroidery floss, but I really enjoy working with the Aurifil 12 weight threads. I've got this nice box of different colours here, and I find that this, because it's lovely and mercerised and shiny, it pulls through really nicely and smoothly, and I guess I just love the colours as well, so I'm going to go for just using that as it is with a good needle and sitting quietly to enjoy some of the stitching. I've just started the running stitch to sew the grid. I'm not sure it matters particularly which order you do things in here. And this is just a running stitch, and I've gone down here, but then rather than skipping to beneath the cat, I've just gone off to one side here, and that's just to avoid having to finish off all the time. I'm just trying to make continuous lines wherever I can. Thought it might be useful now that I've stitched just to show you the back as well. So I'm just starting and finishing with a small knot, and occasionally you can see I've done a bigger stitch on the back just to skip a little part of the cat's leg without starting and finishing, but otherwise just kept to small stitches and kept that gap now to go in and go around the cat with a stem stitch. The interfacing definitely helps to stabilise the block, makes a big difference, and you can see that just from handling it I've got a little bit of fraying around the edges, but because we've got that 1/4 of an inch buffer, then that's all going to be trimmed away, so I don't have to worry about that either. And all my knots, as you can see in my lines, are finishing short of where I'm going to trim that additional 1/4 inch away so that my embroidery stitches won't start to unravel before I sew the block into the finished quilt. I'm just doing the stem stitch now around the cat, so I'm working where I'm going to go in here and then coming back up with my needle just slightly above the end of the previous stitch, and it just creates a really lovely bold continuous line. So down again and then just back up slightly where just above where the last stitch finished, and moving my way around the silhouette of the cat like so. So it's just keeping this thread off. I use my left thumb just to keep that out of the way whilst I go down and then back up and repeat. When people talk about having your thread not too long for any kind of hand sewing, but particularly embroidery, and that old rule of having it like from wrist to elbow no longer, one of the main reasons for that is that when you are making neat stitches, that your eye shouldn't move from what you're doing, so you should be able to go in and out focusing, like here when you really need to, on the stitches that you're making. If you have a very long thread, what you end up doing is your eye follows it and it goes up here and far away because it's so long. You get distracted in that process, it sometimes gets tangles, and then where you're coming back down into your cloth, again, you're not as accurate really, because if you've got a short thread, your hand moves in and out and your eye stays focused on where you're stitching, and that's a really, really useful tip to get lovely consistent stitches of the same size. So you can see that the stem stitch does give a really lovely bold outline around the cat. When you're going around the tight bends of the paws, then you just have to make your stitches a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to go in and fill in the eye and the nose details with a lighter stitch, not as heavy, just so that that silhouette of the cat really stands out. There's also some little paw details on the finished picture on the pattern, even though it's not actually on the pattern that you transfer, so I'll put some of those little details in as well. When you come to stitching the little crosses on this block here, it's actually going to be quicker to do a running stitch across from top to bottom, so to do all your horizontal lines first and then go back up, switch the block around 45 degrees and then do your lines the other way as well, so that they're neat little crosses and you're not pulling the fabric in between each stitch. So what I mean by that is just do all these stitches along here, go down, go along, so making little running stitches for each of your horizontal line, and then simply turn the block around and go back and do that the other way, and that will make each of your crosses. It's kind of like what you do when you're doing Japanese sashiko, that's how you'd make the crosses. Okay, so my little cat has now got some little paw details as well, some little claws. And I'm just using a lighter shade of Aurifil 12 weight pink for the whiskers, because I just want those to not stand out quite so much. It's amazing how actually when you're doing these stitches by hand, just the slight up or down, like the back stitching on the eyes, just a slight angle can kind of automatically gives the cat a little bit of character. I think at this stage, if you do something and you look back and it's not quite right because it's only a few stitches, you can just pull it back. I did that just so it looked like a sweet cat. One eye went a bit wrong and then I just pulled it back and did a few more stitches. So next we're going to move on to adding the fusible web shapes for a little bit of colour. I've finished the embroidery here and done the crosses here. It's a bit shadowy because it's getting late. Losing natural light, but the crisscrosses have worked. I've actually, because I'm doing the crosses in two separate parts, then I've decided just to use 2 tones of green just to give it an extra little dimension. And just to say that if you're going to press your block at any point, just to keep it nice and flat, then with embroidery thread you want to always press from the wrong side. Because I've got interfacing on the wrong side here, I'd also use a pressing cloth just so I don't scorch anything as I go. When it comes just to tracing the shapes off for the fusible web, I'm using Heat and Bond, which I like, but also Vlisafix or other brands are absolutely fine. That's the one I'm using, Heat and Bond Light. So initially you're drawing around the shapes and cutting them out with your paper scissors, just leaving a little gap until you get them fused onto the wrong side of the fabric, and then you cut down the actual shape, and the orientation has been already flipped for you, so you just draw them as they are and then fuse this to the wrong side of your fabric, and when they're finished on going onto the block they'll be the correct way around. It is easier to get your fusible web ironed onto the wrong side of your fabric and then cut down the exact shape, because if that shape, if I'd already cut the pen line and then, or the pencil line, and then you iron it on and then you cut it out again, you haven't got a direct line to follow. And also with some flimsier bonder web, if you cut the exact, fuse the exact shape on, and then once you start cutting to it, it can come away quite easily. So it's just easier to have that little bit of excess. So now I'm just going to cut around these and peel off the back, and then they're ready to fuse in place on my block. And then all that's left to do is the decorative blanket stitch around these squares. So here is my block, nearly finished. I fused those squares on, and now I just need to go and do a hand blanket stitch around. You only have to do the lines that are on the inside, because those external edges are going to be trimmed down when the block becomes 6.5 inches. So to say I didn't know that I could really do hand embroidery, and I don't particularly like cats, as I said, I am very pleased with this block. I think it's really effective. I like the way that it's been designed, so the floor is getting smaller. I think that's really clever. I like the mix of stitching some designs and then putting in those fabric patches as well. I think it's something you could try different versions of and really have a lot of fun. I think I'd quite like to try a dark background with a lighter coloured cat on as well. You could put more details on the cat. It's really, really cool. So I hope that all makes sense, and I will see you next week for more fun.